The Great War has ended and the battle is coming to King's Landing. Recapping and reviewing all things from Game of Thrones Season 8, Episode 4 from last night. A special Game of Thrones edition of Blockbuster Breakdown starts right now. All right, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another edition of Blockbuster Breakdown. This is a special Game of Thrones edition of Blockbuster Breakdown. I started doing these last week with the Battle of Winterfell and figured I would continue them throughout the rest of the season, as we have a shorter season this year with only 6 episodes and only 2 remaining after last night's episode titled The Last of the Starks. Very interesting title there, and we saw it explored further. Obviously, as viewers of the show, we know what it means, and we did get a scene later on in the episode that kind of explores that even further. This is Blockbuster Breakdown. I am your host, Liam Crowley, and as we normally do, we talk blockbusters on this show, but those blockbusters don't always pertain to cinema. Yes, we talk Marvel movies, we talk the big monster movies, we talk the Oscar movies that get a bunch of mainstream attention, but we also talk blockbuster television, and Game of Thrones absolutely fits that billing. Blockbusters, to us, we define them as anything with that mainstream appeal, usually based on extensive lore, extensive characters, and when you see the trailers alone, when you see the teasers alone, when you see the posters, the social media posts, just the stills from set photos, it makes you say, I want to see that right now, and Game of Thrones absolutely fits that billing 100%. This is a show that people obsess over. This is a show that when they were filming in different European countries, people take the set photos from very far away and they try to analyze them. Oh, what's that costume? Why are they wearing that? Where are they in the show at this point? We went a year and a half between seasons, almost a full 2 years, as this season debuted April 14th and the last season wrapped in August of 2017. So almost a full 2 years in between seasons. But this season has kind of just kicked off last episode. Last episode was the Battle of Winterfell. We saw the dead and the Night King come to King's Landing for the Great War, the war to end all wars, and as we know, Arya Stark killed the Night King, and when you take out the Night King, you take out apparently everyone, very much like in the end of the original Avengers from 2012, when Tony Stark goes to the wormhole, throws the nuke at the mothership, and then once the big ship explodes, all the Chitauri down on Earth fell, and that was the end of the battle. No need to kill off any of the remaining soldiers. They're all taken out when you take out the leader. So the war against the dead is over, and we are now shifting into the Game of Thrones. Yes, this show has always been about the politics, has always been about the scheming and the conniving and the backstabbing and all that great stuff that we've come to love. And as much as I did want the show to focus on the war with the Night King and have him play a more pivotal role, this episode kind of reminded me why I love Game of Thrones, and that's for the political aspect. We have come to hate Cersei Lannister. We've come to hate most of the Lannisters that have been on the throne. You see with Joffrey before her, and then Tommen. I mean, we loved Tommen, but he was being manipulated the whole time by Cersei, and I forget her name, but it was his wife who was supposed to be married to Joffrey. Why am I forgetting her name? I'll figure it out at some point later. It'll probably come to me. But nonetheless, we've come to hate the people on the throne, and from there, we now want to focus. It was Marjorie Tyrell. That was the name. I knew it would come to me eventually. I couldn't get my mind off it. Nonetheless, after the Starks and everyone at Winterfell won that war, they're going to shift their focus to King's Landing to take the throne from Cersei, whether that's by force or by peace. And we all know it's going to be by force. But before then, it's time to celebrate. And they're all drinking, having a good time. A lot of the pairings are kind of happening. We don't get to see Tormund and Brienne, unfortunately, for Tormund Giantsbane. He ends up going off with a couple whores or whatnot, and even the Hound is being flirted with by a whore or something, and then he just scares her off because he doesn't like emotion or whatnot. I don't know. I don't really get the Hound. He's not one of my top characters in the show. He's still fun to watch regardless. But yeah, anyways, we get Podrick, Tyrion, Brienne, and Jaime are all playing this drinking game, which I thought was a very fun scene. And we do get a nice little flavor later on when we get a toast. And who is it? I believe it's Tyrion or Varys who toasts to the queen, their queen being Daenerys Targaryen. And she says a toast to the hero of Winterfell, Arya Stark. And that was a really touching moment because we get Daenerys kind of, spreading the wealth and acknowledging other heroes, that there's more people that are doing good than just herself. Speaking of Arya, we get Gendry going to find her. He's fully in love with her. He wants to, he's named Lord of Winterfell, I believe. I'm going to double check that for reference. But Gendry goes to find Arya and basically say that he wants to marry her and all that. And she kisses him, and you think that it's going to be all happy, but, it's not exactly her style. And I was happy that she didn't give up her assassin aspect of her character and didn't abandon that all just for marrying Gendry. And she says, any woman would be lucky to have you, but unfortunately, that's not my style. It's not how I ride. And I really like that. It was sticking true to Arya's character. One thing I did want to address, a lot of people complained about Arya being a bit of a Mary Sue, and a Mary Sue, for those who don't know, is a overpowered female character for the sake of having an overpowered female character. We do see this a lot mostly in cinema rather than television. A lot of people called Rey from Star Wars a Mary Sue in Episode 7 because she was able to beat Kylo Ren in a lightsaber fight without having any past training. While, we don't know the full history of her backstory just yet, but if it's true that she did have training, it would make sense. But when we look at it on surface level, it does make her appear overpowered for the sake of being overpowered. People call Captain Marvel a Mary Sue, even though she has the training with the fighter pilots and all that in the Air Force. Arya, you can make the argument for Rey and for Captain Marvel in cinema. Arya is absolutely not a Mary Sue, and we just need to clear that out of the way. This is a character that for 7 seasons, from the first season when she was being trained with her little sword, and Jon Snow says, stick it with the pointy end, that's when she started training to be this lethal assassin. And she goes on such a journey. She's one of those characters in Game of Thrones that really evolves the most out of anyone. While a lot of people become more mature, obviously Jaime Lannister does the complete 180. We get Sansa Stark becoming a better ruler and better aware of her surroundings. Jon Snow comes to learn more about his history, but he's always true to his nature. He's always an honorable hero. Arya Stark evolves from this child to this deadly assassin. And I thought Maisie Williams does a great job portraying Arya, and anyone who says that she's overpowered for the sake of being overpowered, I think, is not true. Do I think she should have killed the Night King? I don't think anyone should have killed the Night King. I made that apparent in last week's episode. But if anyone's going to kill the Night King, she is one of the most qualified people to take him down. So I was happy that, they didn't just leave it up to any random Dothraki soldier or Unsullied. They gave it to a character that needed it. And honestly, she needed it more than, say, Jon Snow, because as we know, Jon Snow's the heir to the Iron Throne. He's got everything. He's got all the credentials. He has all the accolades in the world. He's arguably the main character of this show. So to have someone like Arya have that notch on her belt that, yeah, I took down the Night King, I thought it was good that they gave it to her. Regardless, as I said in the beginning of this episode, I am happy with the direction of the show now, because even though I wanted more focus on the White Walkers and the Great War and the Long Night and all that, I am happy that we're focusing on the Game of Thrones. And as I say that, we have to stay in Winterfell just for one more bit, because a big thing that happens on this episode is something that fans have been clamoring for forever, even dating back to Season 2. So, as I mentioned, Tyrion, Podrick, Jaime, and Brienne of Tarth are all playing, or Sir Brienne of Tarth, are all playing a drinking game. And Tyrion, it's basically just like drink if you haven't done said thing or whatever, or if you have, I forget the exact rules. But regardless, Tyrion says, if you're a virgin or whatever, and Brienne of Tarth doesn't drink. And it kind of just cues off that she's never slept with anyone. And Jaime, sees that She goes to leave. Tormund says, I'd love to be with a woman like you. And she just says, I have to use the bathroom. I have to piss or whatever, however she words it. Tormund's all sad. He gets a couple whores. He's fine. Jaime goes and he finds her door. He knocks on it. He goes in and he's trying to take off his shirt and he can't because he has the gold hand. And then Brienne of Tarth essentially sleeps with Jaime Lannister. And that's something that people have been clamoring for a long time. And it happens. And Jaime, as we see in this episode, his arc kind of takes a weird twist. We'll get to it later. But I was happy for Brienne of Tarth, especially because, she's one of the more characters in the show that doesn't show a ton of emotion just because she's not allowed to have a lot of emotional moments. I thought one of the best moments of this season is when she gets knighted and she has that moment of joy when she's just smiling, and where it's kind of a bit unsettling, but you can't help but be happy. And it's only unsettling because we never see her smile. So it was nice to have her knighted and have her play a more prominent role in this season. Another love angle that's happening in Winterfell is Jon Snow and Daenerys Targaryen. And one of the weirdest aspects now is they're both aware of who Jon is. And they're kissing and whatnot, and then Jon pulls away and just says, this is weird. And she's like, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And then he's like, well, yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one feeling this way. And she's like, yeah, it's just weird for me to be in love with someone who has a better claim to the Iron Throne than I do. And I'm just like, wait, what? What about the fact that you're related? Is that not the weird aspect? And I'm pretty sure that's what Jon was thinking, that, this is my aunt. This is not someone that I'm just in love with. Like, this is family. We share the same bloodline. And if we're going to have kids, like we saw what happened with Joffrey when Cersei and Jaime had kids, like their brains turn out pretty messed up. So she has her head in the complete wrong place. I'm getting more and more frustrated with Daenerys this season, and I do hope that we do take a turn and have Jon be the one who has the claim to the Iron Throne. But I actually have a theory on what's going to happen. We'll touch on that in just a little bit. Moving on, we do have Jon eventually go and confront Sansa, Arya, and Bran at the tree. And, so Jon says, he's talking to them, and they're talking about how Daenerys don't really trust her and all that, and Jon says the thing, and you know what's going to happen. He says, I have something to say, but you have to promise, you have to swear on your lives that you won't tell anyone. And they're all confused, like, what's going on? Like, your family. Like, of course, you can swear. Like, we're all Starks, and we as the audience know that they're not all Starks. Jon is actually a Targaryen. And the funny aspect is Sansa and Arya think that all three of them are in the dark, but Bran obviously knows, and he just says, the choice is yours. And it's just in the most bleak way Bran possible. Bran's actually one of my favorite characters this season. A lot of people complain at him for being useless. I just love how nonchalant he is and how, we don't know how he gets anywhere, who wheels him around, where are the ramps in Winterfell and all that. Regardless, he tells them, but the camera cuts away, and that was the most frustrating thing because I know we have already seen Jon be told this by Sam, and we already saw Jon tell it to Daenerys. I just wish that, we saw him tell his siblings, well, his adopted siblings, essentially, because that would have been just such a cool moment just to get their reactions and all that. And that ties into a later thing, before that, Daenerys says, swear to no one that you will tell them. And she is now getting into a bit of a batshit crazy mode because she talks about how she doesn't want Jon to tell anyone about his true heritage because they will spread it eventually, and then everyone will know, and then he will have the rightful claim to the Iron Throne. And she is so obsessed with having that seat on the Iron Throne and being in power that she feels if anyone is aware that Jon is the true heir, that they will not respect the fact that he has knelt to Dany. And they will say, no, Jon, you're the heir, whether you want it or not. she should not be on the throne, especially because a lot of people are questioning her leadership now.